power outages aren't rare anymore. They're becoming the new normal across the United States. And some states, they're sitting on a ticking time bomb. What's interesting is that most people think blackouts are random. Bad luck. Wrong place, wrong time. But that's not how this works. Infrastructure doesn't fail randomly. There are patterns, warning signs, and if you know where to look, you can see which states are most vulnerable. This isn't about predicting disasters or fear-mongering. It's about looking at infrastructure stress, weather patterns, and where demand consistently pushes up against supply. Because when you know which states are at risk, you can prepare in ways that actually make sense for where you live. So let's talk about the 15 states most likely to face serious blackouts in 2026, why they're vulnerable, and what that means for people living there. 1. California. Let's start with the obvious one, California. And before you roll your eyes, hear me out. Because California's power problems aren't what most people think they are. Everyone blames the rolling blackouts on renewable energy, solar panels and wind turbines, right? That's the narrative, but that's not the real issue. The real issue is that California's electrical grid is old, really old. Some of it dates back to the 1950s and 60s. You've got infrastructure designed for a population half the size it is now, running at capacity it was never meant to handle. Add to that the wildfire risk. Pacific Gas and Electric has already caused multiple massive wildfires because of aging equipment. So now, when fire conditions get bad, they shut off power preemptively. Public safety power shutoffs. Sounds responsible, right? Except it leaves millions of people without electricity for days at a time. And here's the kicker. California's peak demand keeps climbing. More people, more electric vehicles, more air conditioning as summers get hotter. The grid is being asked to do more every single year with infrastructure that's falling apart. So yes, California tops this list. Not because of politics, because of math. When you push aging infrastructure past its limits while dealing with extreme weather, blackouts aren't a possibility. They're inevitable. 2. Texas, February 2021. If you lived through that, you don't need me to explain. If you didn't, let me paint the picture. A winter storm hit Texas. Temperatures dropped below freezing across most of the state. Natural gas pipelines froze. Power plants went offline. Wind turbines iced over, and the entire grid, which operates independently from the rest of the country, nearly collapsed. 4 million people lost power, some for a week. Over 200 people died. Now Texas made some improvements after that. They winterized some equipment, added some backup capacity. But here's the thing. The fundamental problem wasn't fixed. Texas still operates on its own grid, ERCOT, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. And that grid still runs on razor-thin margins to keep costs down. What that means is there's not much buffer. When demand spikes, whether from extreme heat in summer or extreme cold in winter, the system struggles. And as Texas keeps growing, adding more people, more data centers, more industrial facilities, that problem gets worse. Texas isn't vulnerable because of one freak storm. It's vulnerable because the grid operates with minimal reserves while demand keeps climbing. That's not a recipe for stability, that's a recipe for more blackouts. 3. Arizona doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to blackout risk, but it should. Phoenix is one of the hottest major cities in the United States. Summer temperatures regularly hit 115 degrees, and when it's that hot, everyone runs their AC. All day, all night, because in Phoenix, air conditioning isn't optional. It's a survival tool. The problem is that when everyone runs AC at the same time, demand surges. And Arizona's grid, like California's, is heavily reliant on power imports from other states. When those neighboring states are also dealing with heat waves, they need their own power. So Arizona can't always count on those imports. Add in aging infrastructure, limited water for cooling power plants, and extreme heat events getting more frequent, and you've got a state teetering on the edge. It's not if Arizona sees major blackouts, it's when. 4. New Mexico. New Mexico shares a lot of the same challenges as Arizona. Extreme heat, limited water, aging infrastructure. But New Mexico has an additional problem: rural areas. A lot of New Mexico's population lives in areas where the electrical grid is already fragile. Long transmission lines, fewer redundancies. When something breaks, it takes longer to fix, and more people are affected. New Mexico also relies heavily on neighboring states for power imports during peak demand. And when those states can't spare the electricity, New Mexico gets left in the dark. Literally. 5. Louisiana. Louisiana has a different set of problems: hurricanes. Every year, hurricane season brings the potential for catastrophic damage to Louisiana's power grid. And we're not talking about minor outages. We're talking about entire regions losing power for weeks, sometimes months. Hurricane Ida in 2021 knocked out power to over 1 million people. Some areas didn't get electricity back for 6 weeks, and Louisiana's grid hasn't improved much since then. It's still vulnerable, still outdated, still sitting in the direct path of major storms. As hurricanes get stronger and more frequent, Louisiana's blackout risk climbs, and the state doesn't have the resources to rebuild its grid fast enough to keep up. 6. Mississippi. Mississippi faces the same hurricane threats as Louisiana, but with even less infrastructure investment. The grid is older, maintenance budgets are smaller, recovery times are longer. Mississippi also has high poverty rates, which means many residents can't afford backup generators or solar panels. When the power goes out, they're stuck. And when the grid fails during extreme heat or cold, that's not just an inconvenience. It's dangerous. 7. Florida. Hurricanes. You already know where this is going. Every hurricane season, Florida faces the possibility of massive power outages. Hurricane Ian, Hurricane Michael. These weren't anomalies. They're part of a pattern, and that pattern isn't changing. But Florida has another problem: population growth. More people moving to Florida every year means more demand on the grid, more housing developments, more businesses, more strain on infrastructure that's already vulnerable. Florida has invested in grid improvements, especially after Hurricane Andrew, but the sheer number of storms combined with explosive population growth means the grid is constantly playing catch-up. And when the next big hurricane hits, millions of people are going to lose power. Again. 8. Georgia. Georgia might surprise you on this list, but Atlanta is one of the fastest-growing metro areas in the country, and rapid growth means rapid strain on the electrical grid. Georgia also sits in the path of hurricanes and severe thunderstorms. Tornadoes. Ice storms. The state sees a lot of extreme weather, and each event damages infrastructure that's already stretched thin. Add in aging transmission lines and limited investment in grid upgrades, and Georgia is more vulnerable than most people realize. 9. North Carolina. North Carolina faces a mix of threats: hurricanes on the coast, ice storms in the mountains, thunderstorms and tornadoes in between. The Outer Banks and coastal regions get hit hard during hurricane season: flooding, wind damage, power outages that last for days. Meanwhile, the western part of the state deals with ice storms that snap power lines and knock out electricity to rural communities. North Carolina's grid isn't designed for this range of threats, and as extreme weather becomes more common, the blackout risk climbs. 10. South Carolina. South Carolina has similar vulnerabilities to North Carolina: coastal hurricanes, inland storms, aging infrastructure. But South Carolina also has a high number of nuclear power plants, which sounds good until you realize that nuclear plants need constant cooling. And when water supplies get limited during droughts, or when hurricanes knock out cooling systems, those plants have to shut down. When they do, the grid loses a massive chunk of its generating capacity all at once. 11. Oklahoma. Oklahoma doesn't face hurricanes. It faces tornadoes, a lot of them. Tornado Alley runs right through Oklahoma, and every spring, severe storms tear through the state. Tornadoes destroy transmission lines, damage substations, knock out power to entire towns. Oklahoma also deals with ice storms in winter. Ice accumulates on power lines, weighs them down, and snaps them. When that happens, repairs take days, sometimes weeks, especially in rural areas. Oklahoma's grid is built to handle normal operations, but it's not built to handle the frequency and intensity of extreme weather the state sees. And that's a problem. 12. Kansas shares Oklahoma's tornado problem, severe storms. Ice in winter, extreme heat in summer. Kansas is also heavily reliant on wind energy, which is great when the wind is blowing. But when it's not, the state needs backup power. And that backup isn't always reliable. Kansas has a lot of rural areas with long transmission lines. When those lines go down, fixing them takes time. And during that time, people are without power. 13. Michigan might seem like an odd choice, but hear me out. Michigan's grid is aging, fast, and the state experiences extreme weather swings, ice storms in winter, severe thunderstorms in summer, wind events that knock down trees and power lines. Detroit and the surrounding areas have seen multiple major blackouts in recent years, and the state's utility companies haven't kept up with maintenance. Aging transformers, outdated substations. It's a recipe for more frequent and longer-lasting outages. Michigan also has a lot of industrial demand, manufacturing, data centers. When the grid struggles to meet that demand during peak times, blackouts become more likely. 14. Wisconsin faces similar challenges to Michigan: aging infrastructure, extreme winter weather, ice storms that cripple the grid. But Wisconsin also has a lot of rural areas where the grid is already fragile. Long transmission lines, fewer redundancies. When something breaks, it affects a lot of people, and it takes longer to fix. Wisconsin is also seeing more severe weather events, stronger storms, more ice, more wind. The grid wasn't designed for this level of stress, and it shows. 15. Nevada rounds out the list, and the reason is simple. Las Vegas. Las Vegas is one of the most energy-intensive cities in the country. Casinos running 24/7, massive data centers, constant air conditioning in the desert heat. All of that puts enormous strain on the grid. Nevada also faces extreme heat. Summer temperatures in Las Vegas regularly hit 110 degrees and higher. When everyone cranks up their AC at the same time, demand spikes, and the grid struggles to keep up. Nevada imports a lot of power from neighboring states, but when those states are also dealing with heat waves, they can't always spare the electricity. That leaves Nevada vulnerable. Add in limited water for cooling power plants, and you've got a state walking a tightrope. One major heat wave, one equipment failure. That's all it takes. So there you have it. 15 states where the risk of blackouts in 2026 is real, not hypothetical. Not fear-mongering. Real. What does this mean for you? If you live in one of these states, you need to take blackouts seriously, not as a maybe, as a when. That means having a plan. Backup power. Whether it's a generator, solar panels, or just a battery bank to keep essential devices running. It means having food that doesn't require refrigeration. Water storage, flashlights, batteries, the basics. It also means thinking about cooling and heating. If you live in Arizona or Nevada, how do you stay cool without AC? If you live in Michigan or Wisconsin, how do you stay warm without electric heat? These aren't comfortable questions, but they're necessary ones. And here's the thing most people miss. Blackouts don't just mean no lights, they mean no refrigeration, no way to pump gas. ATMs don't work, credit card readers don't work. If you don't have cash, you can't buy anything. If stores can't process transactions, they close. A blackout that lasts more than a few hours disrupts everything. And if it lasts days, weeks, that's when things get serious. This isn't about predicting disaster. It's about looking at infrastructure stress, weather patterns, and where demand consistently pushes up against supply. And when you know which states are at risk, you can prepare in ways that actually make sense for where you live. So don't wait for the next blackout to start thinking about this. Start now, because the grid isn't getting more reliable, the weather isn't getting more predictable, and demand isn't going down. The states on this list are vulnerable, and if you live in one of them, you need to be ready.